flushing me. Talking mess with Rob. All day. I hit the 7-door slam, we fly. City field dreams in the blue orange sky. Raw break stats with a bird go wild. We from Queens, every pitch like trial. Convo loud, whole car on fire. Hot dog steam, cheap beer to desire. Haters talk rings, we just talk hard. Raw say watch this game by the start. Hey, talking mess with Raw, that's law. Queens in my veins, that roar. 7 train straight to the field. Home run, apple pie, that's real. Let's go, Mets. Never from the top. Let's go, Mets. Never gonna stop from flushing to the world we build. Home run, apple pie, city field. Whoa. From the mezzanine seats to the cheap side row. Rob calling every play a late night show. Every swing, every slide, whole crew on tilt. Queens born, flushing made us take 'em as a ride, that's law. Queens in my veins, that roar. 7 train straight to the field. Home run, apple pie, that's real. Let's go, Mets. Yellow from the top. Let's go, Mets. Never gonna stop from flushing to the world we build. Home run, apple pie, city field. Whoa. Let's go, Mets.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to the Mets weekly recap show right here on the channel and on X. This will be a weekly edition of a show every Sunday, depending on if the Mets play day games on a Sunday or a night game on a Sunday to end the series. We will do it every week, depending on what time is their game on Sunday. So this is going to be a weekly thing. I'll have guests on. I'll have, many different content creators. I'll have, all types of guests, hopefully every week, depending on availability to everybody that wants to join the show. So obviously the season got started on Thursday for the New York Mets playing the Pittsburgh Pirates. Awesome day on opening day. Couldn't get any better weather on opening day, knocking out Paul Skeens in the first inning, all that fun stuff. We'll get into all of it. Game 1, 2, and 3 of the series. We'll get into everything. We'll preview the Cardinals series coming up tomorrow, starting the 3-game series in St. Louis. But when it comes to this show, guys, this is going to, and again, when there's more games for the week, we'll just be recapping all the series for that week. So usually maybe it'll be 2 series, 3 series, depending on how many games. So the good news is that it's early on in the season, right? Is there complaints? Absolutely. If you listen to the post-game show a couple hours ago with me and Chris, we were very frustrated, not because we wanted to cry to the world in regards to, oh, here we go, it's the 3rd game of the season now, we're already hearing Met fans cry. Not about that. It's not just about that. It is the fact that you have a manager that's on the hot seat. You got David Stearns that could be on the hot seat after this year if things don't go right. And this is his team. This is David Stearns' team. He completely blew up the core to make this team. And it's up to him now to do what he needs to do to put his manager in the right position to win. Now, I am not calling out Stearns here and saying, oh, this is why he did this. What I don't like, and this is a trend around baseball, is the fact that David Stearns chose these coaches around Carlos Mendoza. Carlos Mendoza didn't choose his own coaches. He didn't do it in 2024 when he was the manager. He hasn't done it in 2026 when they change up the coaching staff. I don't really like that. I feel like the manager needs to trust his coaches, and when you don't bring in your own coaches, it's hard to trust these guys. And this is where it comes into play in today's game, where every part of managing and coaching in this game had a lot to do why the Mets lost. Yes, it was Bo Bichette. Yes, it was guys not getting the job done at the plate. 100%. 100%. But the coaches need to put their players in the best position to win. And I don't think Carlos Mendoza did that today. And I don't think the third base coach did that today as well. And this is where it leads to also David Stearns with the plan of not having Devin Williams and or Brooks Raley available for today's game. That handcuffed your manager to go for a sweep. When you have to use Richard Lovelady in 2 games out of 3 in this series, you got a problem. You got Sean Manaea that doesn't know what you're going to get from him, even though he did get out of a jam, sure. But he was throwing nothing up there. He was throwing garbage. Lovelady, the same thing. And to have nobody up after Lovelady walk those two batters is a joke. And then on top of that, you allow him to give up 2 runs. You can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. And this is where I put it on Mendoza. I put it on the third base coach. And I put it on David Stern from the start because this is already predetermined before a game. Why have 2 of your best relief pitchers not available on the same day? That's a problem. You can't have that happen because we all know if it happened today in this game where Mendoza couldn't go to Williams, couldn't go to Raleigh, why do you think it's not going to happen again down the road? You can't have that. If you want to have one of them not an option for that day, make sure it's only one of them, not both of one of your best relievers in the bullpen. Like, how are you supposed to win that way? You used Luke Weaver earlier in the game. So Luke Weaver technically was supposed to be a closer, so to speak, and you used him. Like, who was pitching if the Mets would have tied the game? Would you have thrown Lovelady back out there? Because who was available? Who was really available at that point? It just doesn't make sense. So the third game today's game was frustrating within itself because the Mets should have won the game. Like, look, if the Mets would have hit and did their jobs, this game would have been over a long time ago. We would have swept the series, and the Mets probably would have won by like 4 or 5 runs. But at the end of the day, they still had a chance to win the game. And then go into the 10th inning, have Francisco Alvarez on second as the ghost runner. Lindor comes up. You got the leadoff hitter up. You got the top of the order up. Lindor walks. Here we go. We're ready to go. Nobody out. First and second down by 2. Juan Soto coming up. Boom. Juan Soto hit his opposite field, left center field gap. We're off to the races. Francisco Alvarez is going to score easily. Francisco Lindor is running, right? He only sees the ball in left center field after once he hits second base, he's looking at his third base coach. The third base coach needs to know the situation. He needs to know that there's nobody out. You are going to have second and third with nobody out with your 3, 4, and 5 hitters coming up. You cannot, unless you're absolutely 100% sure that Francisco Lindor is going to score on that play. And even if you were 99.9% sure, there is enough doubt that 0.1% should leave him at third base because there are no good options when it's not 100% of a guarantee. It wasn't a perfect relay. The outfielder bounced the ball a couple of times to the cutoff man, and the throw to home plate was offline. But Lindor was out by so much that it gave the catcher time to get back in front of the plate after he had to move to his left to tag Lindor. That was a terrible job by the third base coach. And then you have Mendoza speaking after the game, backing up his third base coach, which, again, I don't want to hear that, Mendoza. Now, maybe Mendoza took him in the office and said, listen, I understand the aggressiveness, but you have to understand the situation. Hopefully he tore him a new one in the office because you can't have that. Right? We talked about the coach, the third base coach for the last couple of seasons, especially last year, where he was constantly making bad decisions, holding guys up when he shouldn't have, being too aggressive when he shouldn't have. It was a constant battle. You changed this whole coaching staff because you said these guys are better, David Stearns. And that was a terrible job by the third base coach. You can't do that. You got the middle of the order coming up. Yes, Bo Bichette is struggling. Yes, Polanco hasn't come off to the greatest start. But Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco are your 2 best hitters in your lineup with runners on base and runners in scoring position last year. That's the best opportunity to win that ball game or at least tie the ball game. And what happens? Lindor gets out. You got Soto at second. Ground ball. Bichette. Soto goes to third. 2 outs. Polanco misses the home run by 2 feet. But, and look what would have happened, right? You would have had a situation where if it was second and third and nobody out, what would have happened, right? The infield probably would have been halfway, or at least the corners would have been in halfway. A hard hit ball gets through the hole. You tie the game at the very least, and you have an opportunity to win the ball game. It was just a bad decision by the third base coach. I know he probably realized it. Obviously, was like, damn, I should have held him up, but you can't make those mistakes, right? The players are doing their job. The players are working the walk. The players are getting the big hit. You cannot have the coach destroy that inning. You just cannot. And prior to that bottom of the 10th, you had Mendoza leaving Lovelady in. It was just, and you had him in the first place, which is just mind-boggling to me. Why in a 3-game series you have Lovelady pitching 2 out of the 3 games is the stupidest thing I can even think of. But that is David Stearns wanting Lovelady there because he has the option of DFA in his ass. So again, by tomorrow he'd probably be DFA'd, and you probably see somebody else from Syracuse come up. Well, Kevin, I'm not going to be relaxed. You know why? You could say that because you're a Dodger fan, right? You got back-to-back world championships. You're 3-0. You're world beaters. But, we're trying to compete with you guys in the National League. You can't have those stupid mistakes. Those stupid mistakes can cost you a division, can cost you a playoff spot. Like, it has nothing to do with relax, it's only 3 games, because what happened last year? The Mets missed the playoffs by 1 game. Now, you can pick many games over the course of the year that they should have won, but why did we have to come back to this game and say, well, that could have been it? Like, it has nothing to do with, it's only 3 games. Right? When you missed the playoffs with high expectations last year, when you constantly made mistakes from management, from managers to coaches to players, where 1 game made a difference last year, you can't take it lightly. You just cannot. Now, I'm not saying the Mets are in trouble and they're not going to win 91 games as I predicted, but it's these little things that can cost you down the road, because why wouldn't Mendoza make this mistake again? Why wouldn't the third base coach make that mistake again? What if he does it in the next series? What, are we going to be okay with it? Oh, it's only 6 games in this time? No. Every game counts, and everybody has to understand that. If it didn't count, then you know what? Let's not turn on the TV until July. Is that when it counts? Because tell me when games actually count. They all count. When you have 3 teams in your division, in the Phillies, the Mets, and the Braves, 3 teams that some probably around the country has chosen one of those 3 teams to win the division. You can't lose these type of games, because it can come to tiebreakers, it can come to matchups, it can from seeding. It's a lot of problems at that point. And it's not the loss in particular, because it's only 3 games in, that is the frustrating part. The frustrating part is seeing the mistakes that we dealt with last year. Mendoza's decision-making in-game cost us some games last year. The third base coach cost us outs and runs last year by either being too aggressive sending guys, or being not so aggressive not sending guys when he should have sent guys. And we see that again with different people at third base, a different coach at third base than last year. So you can't continue to have these problems, because then you start to say, is it an organizational problem? because there's nobody in their right mind that thought sending him was a good idea with nobody out. Look, if there was 2 outs in the inning and you're trying to tie the game here, I can see you being aggressive, right? You can't expect, the next batter to come up and get the job done. There ain't no chance of a sac fly with 2 outs. But less than 2 outs, you have to be smart. You have to be 100% sure. And even if you are 100% sure, even a tad bit of doubt as a third base coach to send him and thinking he would score, you got to hold him up. There is no blame going if you held him up. Yeah, everybody would have been like, God damn it, we could have tied the game. People would have been somewhat upset, but then realized, man, it would have been a close play. And it ended up being not even close. And that was with a bad relay and a bad throw to home plate. It wasn't even a good sequence of events to make a perfect throw. From the outfield to the cutoff man to home plate. Each ball was offline. Each throw was offline. But that just shows you how far Lindor was from scoring easily. Now, again, what you hope is that Mendoza took the third base coach in the office and said, listen, man, you can't do that. You got to be more smart. You got to understand the situation there. And maybe the third base coach realized it and it was just in the moment. But again, you can't be in the moment. You got to block out all that noise. You got to be better than that. You got to understand the situation. And that right there probably cost us the game. Yeah, you can go back to many plays during the game with players, but I'd rather have the players lose the game than the coaching staff and the manager losing the game, making those decisions. Because these decisions cost us the game. And everybody, me and Chris were talking about in the post game. That is the issue. So, game 3, bullshit, sucks, should have won. Yeah, Dolo, that's fine being more aggressive. But being aggressive doesn't mean with nobody out and the tying run and the winning runs on first and third and second and third with nobody out in extra innings. That's not being aggressive. That's being stupid. That has nothing to do with being aggressive. Being aggressive is saying, hey, there's 2 outs. We can tie this game or win this game. With 2 outs, there's not much chance of the batter bringing in that runner unless he gets a hit, right? No sac fly can get that run in. That's being aggressive. That's not a stupid aggressive play or decision. Being more aggressive, you also have to be smart about it and realize the situation. That's not aggressive. That's just pure stupid. And Dolo, that's fine not throwing him under the bus. And that seems to be a trend, nowadays, which is fine. I understand not throwing your coach under the bus, but somebody needs to say something. I'm sorry. Like, maybe they did. Maybe Mendoza spoke about it. Again, I'm not throwing Mendoza under the bus and saying he didn't do it, but it better not happen again, right? We better not be in another situation where it's a similar situation with less than 2 outs and you send the runner again knowing that it's not a guarantee this guy's going to score. You can't do that. You're running out of innings. You're losing games. We can't have managers and coaches losing games when the players are doing their job. The players were doing their job in the 10th inning. They didn't do nothing wrong. Now, I'm going to blame Bo Bichette and Juan Soto and other guys that didn't get the job done during this game. They deserve the blame, right? It shouldn't have led to that moment, but it was that moment. The opportunity to win was there. And the coaching staff, with the decisions of bringing in Lovelady, not having Devin Williams and Brooks Raley not available in a third game of a series, and the way they planned this out, they planned up the guys coming out in their quote unquote lanes. They set it up where they were hoping Nolan McClain, or they factored in Nolan McClain going 6 innings. He didn't do that. So that's an extra inning you got to use a bullpen on. You bring in Weaver for 1 inning, fine. But you bring in Oscar Brazaban that was he threw like 7 pitches. Why not use him another inning? If you know Devin Williams and Brooks Raley is not available, you got to extend that bullpen a little bit. Use Oscar Brazaban for a second inning instead of going to Manaea. Like it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense the way it was set up. Like the whole plan of the bullpen didn't make any sense. Like because who was closing this game? Was it Weaver? Well, clearly not, because if I'm not mistaken, when did Weaver come in the game? If I think he came in, let's see, hold on. Let me just double check real quick. If I'm not mistaken, he was, yeah. So it's like, so you brought in Weaver in, I think it was, let me see, the 7th, yeah. So maybe. So we brought Browser in for an inning and 2/3, that's fine. Manaea in and a third, okay. So yeah, it was okay. So 2, 6, 7, 8. All right. So you brought Weaver in the 9th in the tie game. Why? Why? Why would you do that? Who was closing this game? Now you brought in Weaver in top of the 9th, knowing that you had no Devin Williams, you had no Brooks Raley. There was not many people left in his bullpen. You were very shorthanded to start the game, which none of us knew. We knew after the game, which is another bad decision on this team's part, where they plan this pregame. Somebody has to be available. Devin Williams pitched once in this series yesterday. What did he throw? 15 pitches? Why is he not available? Why'd you pay him to be a closer if he's not available back-to-back days? I don't care if it's the third game of the season. Maybe if you put in Devin Williams instead of Lovelady, he wouldn't have gave up the runs. It just doesn't make any sense at all. No sense at all. Well, that was game 3. There was a lot of concerns, a lot of problems in game 3. Game 2. Well, it wasn't looking good. There's a situation where it's like, it was freezing outside. It was extra innings. It was starting to be like, looking easy. Like, most likely this team was going to lose this game because it just seemed to look like that. The way it was coming, way it was going. And, when the Pirates finally broke through, we're like, come on. Really? We're going to lose this goddamn game? And then the star of this series and the start of the season is Luis Robert Jr. That guy, man, is badass. Like, I said this for a while. The Mets fucked up last year by not bringing in Luis Robert Jr. I said it. The guy needed a change of scenery. And I'm not saying these 3 games are going to say that he's going to go off to have a really good season and, bat 250, hit 25 home runs, 75 to 80 RBIs, 25 stolen bases. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. And Mr. Kletsky, the Pirates upgraded. But look, they scored 4 runs, 2 runs in the last 2 games. So they upgraded their offense and they scored 6 runs in the last 2 games. The Mets scored 7 and lost in the last 2 games. So, like, they upgraded, but the Mets didn't lose because they upgraded. The Mets lost. They lost this game, right? From players to coaches, they lost this game. Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Pirates left a ton of men left on base. They kept on giving the Mets opportunities. They kept on making crucial errors in this series. And that's what's frustrating. Well, Dio, I said that. I like I said, I didn't care if it was Vientos or Acuna. But, and that's another thing, right? And me and Chris talked about it on the postgame, going back to game 3 before we finish up game 2. In game 3, when you pinched hit for Luis Torrens, for Jared Young because of matchups, you put in a minor leaguer, because Jared Young's a minor leaguer, because it's a righty on the mound, and Jared Young has some pop. when you already pinch hit 4 Terrens and put Jared Young in the game, knowing that you were going to put Alvarez in the game to catch. Why not just pinch hit him? You just used 2 guys. You lost 2 guys off the bench. Just like that. Why? Stupid. You could have pinched hit, and if you wanted to pinch hit Jared Young for just because of matchups, regardless of why, because the only reason why anybody can think of is because there was a lefty-righty matchup. That was it. I hate matchups. Me and Chris have talking about this for years. I hate when they decide decisions on matchups. And it's not about the numbers. It's about Jared Young, a lefty, and the pitcher on the mound, the righty. That's it. That's stupid. When we all can agree Alvarez is probably the better hitter, and Vientos has that power and that potential, right? Because we've seen it. What have we seen from Jared Young? Buying the most amount of tickets going back and forth to Syracuse? That's it. Vientos or Alvarez should have hit in that spot. Most likely it should have been Alvarez, knowing that he was going to catch for Terrens anyway. You could have kept Jared Young an extra bat off the bench. You could have kept him on the bench. You waste 2 players at one time because you pinch it for Luis Terrens. Jared Young is a pinch hitter. He's not catching, so he's out of the game after that at bat. And now Alvarez is catching. So you basically lose 3 guys. You use the starter in Terrens, Jared Young pinch hitting, and now Alvarez catching. Technically, you lose Jared Young off the bench. Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. So you rather have an inexperienced, lesser of a hitter in Jared Young because he's just a lefty over Alvarez or Mark Vientos. Well, Mike, you could say matchups are unfortunately the way it is now. Okay, why did Carson Bench hit against a tough lefty? Why didn't Mark Vientos hit in that spot? Right, you had Tyrone Taylor on the bench. You could have pinch hit the right-hander for Mark Vientos over Carson Bench, who has shown that he struggled against lefties in this series. Struggled overall, but he struggled mightily in this series against lefties. So matchups are only convenient when they think it's convenient and they think it's okay to use. That's because if it's the way it is now, matchups, then you should do it all the time, not just some of the time. That's what frustrates me. If you're gonna do it all the time. Don't do it randomly. Because in this, I guarantee you, this is gonna be another situation like today, where Luis Terrens is hitting or in the lineup starting, and it's a situation where you wanna power bat off the bench. And in this case today, you had Alvarez, Vientos, and Jared Young, all guys that can hit the ball over the wall. But out of those 3 guys, Jared Young should be your 3rd choice, not your 1st choice because of a matchup. It's stupid. And that was the other thing that also annoyed me as well. So multiple decisions by Carlos Mendoza, the dumb decision and the lack of situational awareness by the third base coach cost us late in that game. Now, I'm not saying Alvarez would have hit a bomb or Vientos would have done anything, but it was the better decision, right? I'm not killing Mendoza if he put in Vientos or Alvarez to hit for Luis Terrens, because those are your best guys on the bench that have that power. And depending on the at-bat, if it looked really bad and, Alvarez or Vientos struck out on three pitches, then I'll kill him. But if they didn't hit a home run, and let's say they got an out, I'm not going to kill the guy who was cold off the bench. But your best options for a home run in that spot is Alvarez or Vientos, not Jared Young. So the decision for David Stearns to put Jared Young and Richard Lovelady on this roster as the final two spots when you could have had Vidal Brujan and anybody but Lovelady, because there was other guy you could add Kimbrel, but no, you needed a Lovelady because he's a DFA candidate, and Jared Young who has options. It's beautiful, right? When David Stearns has the options, but he leaves Mendoza with the lack of options. Talked about this in the offseason. You got to put your manager in the best situation to win. I think David Stearns did a terrible job with roster construction last year that put Mendoza in a terrible spot. Mendoza deserves some blame, but when you're handcuffed because of your GM, I don't like it. And David Stearns did that with the last couple of roster spots. Because you could have picked a ton of guys who are better than Lovelady. You didn't need a third lefty in this bullpen. You had Manaea. You have Rayleigh. That's enough. Why would you take Darryl Young, other guys that could have been fine? Vidal Brujan would have been fine. MJ Melendez would have been fine. It's just... And Dio, I agree with you. I do agree with you. Mets have better lineup, but not a better coaching staff. I agree. Like, I don't know what these coaches are. I really don't. Like, Kai Correa is the next coming of being a Mets manager. Let's be honest about that. That's why I said I don't like what David Stearns did by choosing his guys and allowing Mendoza to sit in the corner and watch what happens. The manager needs to have some say in his coaching staff. Because how are you, it's like being at work, right? Your boss says, hey, you're the leader. You are the guy that I trust the most. You are the guy that I come to for everything. But I'm choosing your partners and your coworkers that work with you. That's it. Right? And it's like, whoa. It's like, so I don't get a choice on picking guys that I feel like I can trust and I know that can do the job. And when we work together, we work good. No, it's like, oh, it's your guys. And obviously you like these guys. You trust these guys. But these are my replacements. One of them is going to be my replacement. Kai Correa is the next man up. I just don't get it. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Kimbrel is a veteran. Yeah, I agree. Kimbrel should have been on his team. I agree with that. Kimbrel was fine in spring training. It wasn't great, but he was fine. I can tell you this right now. What would you rather have today, Lovelady or Kimbrel on the mound? At least Kimbrel actually has decent stuff. Like, it is just silly to me what happened in this game from, obviously bad at-bats that, throughout the game, late in the game wasn't much better, but again, the hitters did their job in the 10th inning. The third base coach didn't know what the hell he was doing. When it comes to game 2, a game that, was dragging along, it was freezing. You can tell these players, the first 6 innings took an hour and 40 minutes. Like, these players did not want to be on that field, man. It was cold. And I was at that game. It was freezing. Freezing. The wind never stopped blowing. It was constant 15 to 20 miles an hour wind. It was bad. Bad how cold it was. And it just wouldn't stop. It was relentless. And when Pittsburgh scored and went up 2-1, I'm like, come on. And what happened? Couple of good at-bats, get runners on, and Luis Robert Jr., the ball just jumps off his bat. He has so much talent. He just needs to stay healthy, and he needed the change of scenery. Luis Robert Jr. should have been a New York Met 2 years ago in 2024. He definitely should have been a Met last year over Cedric Mullins. And we walk it off in game 2, in extra innings, in 11. First home run career for the Luis Robert Jr. He's loving being a New York Met. You could see the excitement. You could see that he's involved. And again, I don't care who you are. I don't care how talented you are. If you're playing for the Chicago White Sox, where's the motivation? Yeah, you get the check clears every 2 weeks and that nice payday. I understand that. And they're supposed to be professionals. But even professionals are looking as like, am I going to give my all, giving it 110%, knowing that if I get injured, I'm stuck on this lifeless team? When the White Sox basically held him out of games prior to the deadline for the possibility of trading him. And he was risking not trying to get hurt because they were probably telling him to, hold up, slow down a little bit. If we're going to trade you, we don't need you to get hurt. And, we finally got Luis Robert Jr. after 2 years of being involved and being rumored to get him. He's here now. Yep. Well, Dolo, yeah, it might have been more money, but I don't think that was. I know that was kind of like the story and everything like that. We don't know what it was, and maybe Antoine Richardson did want more money, and Stearns we all know he's a tough negotiator when it comes to that, regardless of who you are. And this is another thing too. I think the Mets should have stolen more bases in this series. There was opportunities to do so. You got more speed in your lineup than you probably had in a couple of years. And they're not utilizing that right now. Now, is that Antoine Richardson not being here? Strong possibility. But, at this point, again, it's 3 games into the season. I'm not overreacting. We did win a series. Again, the goal is to win series here. You win series, you're on a good track of winning 90 games. You are. And that is interesting. That is just obvious, right? You got 3 games against St. Louis coming up, as we'll get to that series in a little bit. Then you have to go to the West Coast and play San Francisco for 4. Then we come back home. Then we go back to the West Coast. Whoever thought of that scheduling should be thrown off a balcony. Stupid. Why didn't you just put LA with San Francisco so they can stay in LA or stay in California? But no, that's just what we get. But we kind of get it out of the way. We get the West Coast trips, or at least the Dodgers and the Giants West Coast trip out of the way in April, while they're going to come to us later in the year. So that's not too bad. But it's a tough travel schedule in April, unfortunately. And we'll see how this team reacts, because they're going from St. Louis to San Francisco, then come back home, and then fly right back out to the West Coast. So game 1 was obviously a lot of fun, right? The Mets were relentless in doing what they did in the first inning, the Paul Skeens. That was already going to the bottom of the first when you were losing 2-0 after the Brandon Lau home run. And you come back, score 5 on the board, couple of misplays in center field by O'Neal Cruz. Paul Skeens getting frustrating because the batters keep on fouling tough pitches off, working 10-pitch at-bats. Again, Luis Robert Jr. with that 10-pitch at-bat that led to the Brett Beatty clearing bases triple to give the Mets the lead in the first inning. And then that led to the 5 runs. And then the Mets just took off from there and kept on adding on and adding on and adding on. The pitching wasn't great, but when you got leads, you're not going to throw a ton of breaking balls and off-speed pitches. You don't want to walk people. You're throwing more fastballs. Led to a couple more runs given up as the Pirates scored 7 runs in that game. But ultimately, that game it felt like it was never out of hand, and the Mets took care of business. Great opening day, great weather, great food, great drinks, great game. And everybody went home happy as the best team in Major League Baseball on opening day, and that is the New York Mets. But win game 1, win game 2, you already win the series. The frustrating part for game 3 is that the fact that you had a chance to sweep and your two of your best relievers weren't available in one game, in the same game. That can't happen anymore. It can't. Pick one. Which one needs more rest? Do you worry about Riley and his injury from last year and want to take it easy? Great. Give Riley the opportunity to have the day off and keep Devin Williams around, who only threw like 15 pitches in game 2. Come on. Like you paid this guy to be the closer. You made that quick decision on signing Devin Williams early in the offseason. Use him. What are we doing here? And you didn't do it. You didn't do it. Gio, I don't think it's the players, because I don't think the players care, to be quite honest with you. Like, they go out there and play, right? They worry about their individual stats. They worry about, doing what they need to do to stack up their stat line and secondary make the team win. I don't think they care about the coaching staff. I don't think they believe that the coaching staff is gonna, make them win or lose. I think if you give truth serum to Soto, Lindor, the top guys on this team, they would say, "Nah, we should have scored more runs. The at bats that we didn't get the job done were runners on base." He would say that. He would say we were the problem. But you give him truth serum, he would probably say that, hey, Mendoza, they should have not had both of these guys not available today. The third base coach shouldn't have sent me with nobody out, with the go ahead, with the winning run on second base and the tying run on third base with nobody out. Like, that's baseball 101. That's elementary school baseball, right? That's Little League baseball. That is pickup game baseball. That is just simple common sense baseball. That is why it's so frustrating, right? If it was a bang bang play, like right there, all right, I would have been so mad, because it was like, boom boom, that close. All right, fine, but all that transpired, and if you watch the replay, the outfielder threw it on a bounce to the cutoff man. The cutoff man threw it home offline to the left, and he still had time to come back and tag Lindor and basically out by a mile. He tagged him before the white line to home plate was right there. That's where he tagged him. Like, it wasn't even close. And Jeremy, it's not about the manager not bad-mouthing his coach to the press. And hopefully he did have that private conversation. But this is a situation where you're going to have fans question, hey, your third base coach was hired by David Stearns, a person that you didn't handpick. Like, that question's going to happen. These guys are David Stearns handpicked guys. These are handpicked guys that are going to be here if Carlos Mendoza gets fired. They're not firing any of these coaches. These guys are going to stay here regardless if Mendoza's here or not the rest of the season. So it's bad. It was just all around bad. I think it was leaving 15 runners on base today. That can't happen. You got to make that. You got to cut that in half. There was opportunities here to score more runs, and you allowed the Pirates to stick around, and they're not a bad hitting team, right? They have more offensive potential in their lineup than they did last year. So, the lineup isn't easy just going across, going through it. But you had opportunities to win this game by easily. And they didn't allow that to happen. So it's unfortunate. Lounge, yes, we did. We just talked about the Lovelady situation being in high leverage situations in 2 out of the 3 games in this series, while Devin Williams and Brooks Raley were unavailable today, according to Carlos Mendoza. Like, again, doesn't make sense. All right, let's get into the next series. Obviously, the Mets head over to St. Louis for a 3-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals. The pitching matchups are Holmes versus Lie. You got Senga versus Palante, and you got Peralta versus Liberator. And those names are not easy to pronounce, and that would be annoying throughout this series and pre-games and post-games. But You're going to see Holmes. You're going to see Stengel for the first time this year. More people are much more higher on Clay Holmes than I am. I want to see it because the same conversation we had about David Peterson from August 1st on, basically tiring out and had no stamina for the rest of the season and just had nothing in the second half. We're kind of not focused on the Clay Holmes situation. I think we have to be very aware about Clay Holmes throwing 170 plus innings last year for the first time in his career, and think it's just going to be all happy go lucky, and everybody's going to be happy and everything's going to be okay when it comes to Clay Holmes, right? His body's got to adjust to throwing 170 innings last year, and now it's got to come back after their offseason and do that again. Now, we've seen what happens with that. Now, maybe he can do it and there won't be an issue, but not only does he have to throw similar innings, he also has to be good, or at least as good as he was last year, maybe even better. That's what you're asking for. And let's see. Well, Holmes should be better in 6 innings. Yeah, well, he might be. We don't know. We have no idea. To think that he can just go 6 innings when he barely did it at all last year. I think he did it 2 times, and one of them was the second to last game of the season. Like, I don't know, man. All right. Well, what do I think about Sean Manaea? He has nothing. He was very lucky today. Very lucky today. Now, I guess it's nice to have a little bit of luck when you pitch, but I mean, he hit 90 twice. The fastball is not there. There's no zip on it. He was throwing between 87 and 89, mostly with his fastballs. His off-speed breaking ball pitches are just not as lethal as they were 2 years ago. It's a concern. Now, you give him credit for getting out of it and getting the job done. He eventually got the job done. But again, it is against a Pirates team that were clearly aggressive towards, with their at-bats against Sean Manaea. So I'm not saying that Manaea can't get better. And, and this is coming out of the bullpen, where usually guys who come out of the bullpen who are starters have a lot more in the tank. And you'll see another mile an hour or 2 on the fastball when you're in the bullpen, because you can let it go. You don't have to throw 6 innings. You only got to throw 1 or inning and a half. Inning and a third or inning and 2/3. And he just didn't have no zip on that fastball. So, yeah, he got away with it today, but will he get away with it against a Giants team or a Cardinals team or a Dodger team or the Phillies or the Braves? That's something to be talked about. And, we can't talk about it. I mean, we can talk about it, but we have to wait and see. And I don't see his velocity just coming back out of nowhere. 2 years ago, he was throwing 94, 93, 94 with a little bit of uptick where, the ball looked like it rose in the batter's box, over the plate. Like, it literally went like this. And it's just not doing that. So, again, he got the job done. So I'm not going to, overreact, because he did get the job done. Regardless of how it happened, he got the job done. But do I trust him? No, I don't. So let's go back to the game 1 of the series, pitching matchup, Holmes and Lie. Again, Holmes, am I going to overreact about a game? He's probably going to go 5 innings. Like, look what Mendoza was doing in this series. He took every one of his pitches out before the 6th inning ended. Obviously circumstances made that happen, but do I think Holmes is going to go 6 innings tomorrow? No. Yeah, Dolo, I think his delivery looks like it hurts, because I think he is in pain. I think them loose bodies in his elbow are an issue, and I think that's what's causing the lack of velocity in his fastball. Because I think he's holding it back. So, because if he lets it go, it's probably going to hurt like hell. And that's unfortunate. When is AJ Minter returning? I'm guessing May. He is rehabbing right now and throwing in the minors and bullpens and all that stuff. So I'm guessing May. So we'll see what Holmes can do here. We'll see if Mendoza shakes up the lineup a little bit. Um, Again, he left the lineup basically the same the 3 games in the series. Obviously, he flipped Alvarez for Torrens today because they usually give Alvarez a day off. You starting catcher a day off after the series. In a Sunday, that's what you usually do. So excuse me. They flipped Polanco and Beatty. Polanco DH, Beatty played first base. Beatty looked good at first. Polanco has been somewhat shaky at first, but overall he's better than I expected in this series. So I'm actually fine with it. Bo Bichette concerns with defensively and offensively, so a little shaky there. But I'd love to see what Mendoza is going to do with the lineup. Is Vientos going to play tomorrow? That is something. Are they going to try to get Polanco off his feet? Maybe give him a day off, or give Simeon a day off. So maybe Beatty will play second base, and Polanco will be off, and you would DH Vientos, or play Vientos at first base, DH somebody else. A Jared Young or something like that. Like that, I would not be shocked if you see Mendoza shake up the lineup tomorrow and play certain plays that haven't played or started yet, like a Mark Vientos who hasn't even gotten that bat in this 3-game series, which I think is insane. I think there was 2 opportunities in game 2 and game 3 where Vientos would have made sense. Again, would he have got the job done? Who knows? But there was opportunities for Vientos to pinch hit in games, and Mendoza didn't do it. Like, you can't have this guy on a roster and not play. Like, even Tyrone Taylor got in there to pinch run. Even Jared Young got a pinch hit appearance over Mark Vientos. Like, Mark Vientos is the only one that I don't think have gotten to a game yet. That's crazy. That shouldn't be happening. And that sucks. So we'll see. So game 2 is the infamous Kodai Senga, who looked great in spring training. Velocity is way up. Kodai Senga pitched extremely well in spring training. According to him, according to the Mets, he's very healthy. Me, I still don't trust him. I'm not going to overreact by great starts or good starts by Kodai Senga because we've seen what happens through the first 7 or 8 starts. It eventually, something happens either injury-wise or whatever his issue is, not pitching well. I got to see more. Right? Because I know what's going to happen in game 2 if Senga pitches really well. Everybody will be like, oh, Rob, look, you shut down Kodai Senga. You didn't even want him. You wanted to trade him. Not overreacting if he's bad. Not overreacting if he's great. And I promise you that I'm not going to react either way. If the Mets win, obviously we'll have a conversation about Kodai Senga and his performance, but I'm not overreacting to a great performance or a bad performance. But with Senga, we know he has the stuff. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy? Can he be consistent throughout the season? And can he be in this 5-man rotation and pitch at times on regular rest? Because that's what's going to happen. Mendoza, even though with the off days, you didn't have to worry about Senga pitching on the 5th day, but next time around, he's going to pitch on the 5th day. Can he do it? We know his numbers or his lack of good numbers when he pitches on regular rest. It's very limited sample size because he doesn't do it basically at all. But he's got to do it. The Mets are not planning around Kodai Senga in his 6th day anymore. They can't. He's a 5th starter. You cannot allow that and dictate your rotation around Kodai Senga with off days. He's either got to buy in and figure it out, or your ass is out of this rotation and somebody else is going to take your spot. Probably not Sean Manaea, but maybe it's a Jonah Tom. Maybe it's somebody else that might be ready or they think can be ready. And that's the way I see it when it comes to Kodai Senga. And the series finale is the second start of Freddie Peralta's Mets career. Hopefully, we already won the series and we're going for another sweep or a possible sweep. That would be nice against a Liberator. And again, Freddie Peralta wasn't great on opening day. I'm not going to say survived, but he did what he had to do. I thought it was very important what happened in the early part of the game when obviously he gave up a 2-run homer in the first inning to allow, and the Mets put up a 5 spot. What do you always want from your ace or from any pitcher, but mostly from your ace or your top starter, is to put up a 0 once your team gave you a lead and put up some runs. And he did that, and it just calmed everybody down. It calmed the game down, right? When you give up a 2-run homer and you score 5 runs in the first inning and 7 runs are scored combined in the first inning, a lot's going on. So what you need to do is settle everything down. And what did he do? He struck out the side. And then the Mets just took off from there. So he calmed everything down. He slowed the heartbeat of the game. And then the Mets offense just took off from there. With Freddie Peralta, I need more. I'm going to be the first one to tell you that. I love that we got Freddie Peralta. I was hoping we got a guy like Freddie Peralta or Sandy Alcantara. Somebody like that. We got Freddie Peralta. I need to see more. Right? I need to see you, not do what you did on opening day. And again, it's the first game, new team, first time in his career. He talked about, being a Mets fan or, family being in New York and all that, in Queens and all that stuff. So it is important to him. Probably nervous, probably very, very, the blood boiling, just a lot of energy. Maybe he was overthrowing a bit, making them breaking balls off speed pitches a little bit more harder than he liked to throw them. Fastball a little bit up, maybe trying to throw it too hard. A lot of things like that. Again, it is excuses, but it is opening day. It is a new team. It is a whole new different, life for a player that never played for another team. And this is a team that he clearly enjoys playing for. So it could have been all of that. And he did get rocked against for the White Sox. But again, who cares? So we'll see what Peralta does the second time around in the third game of this series against the Cardinals. So far the Mets are 2-1. We got 3 games against the Cardinals starting tomorrow. Game starts at 7:45 tomorrow. So there will be a pregame probably around 6:45 and 7. Post-game show for me might be difficult because the game might end way too late. And you guys know I work overnight. So possibility I could do the post-game show, but most likely Chris will do a post-game show. Maybe I'll pop on for maybe about 10-15 minutes just to give a quick recap, quick instant reaction, and then, go to work. So thank you for tuning in to the first of 2026 Mets weekly recap right here on the show. Weekly recaps every week on a Sunday if the Mets games are during the day. Obviously, if the Mets are playing a night game, 7 o'clock night game or, a national game, Sunday night baseball or whatever it might be, and I can't do a night show for Mets weekly recap, I'll definitely do an early afternoon weekly recap or something like that. But depending on most of the time when the Mets play day games on Sunday, I'll do a weekly recap show. So have a great night, guys. The Mets are 2-1 on the season. Tough loss today, frustrating loss today, but let's see them bounce back and go to St. Louis and win another series and have back-to-back series wins to start the season for the New York Mets. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X, guys. Have a good night.
Flushing Maine, talking Mets with Rob all day. I hit the 7-door slam, we fly. City field dreams in the blue orange sky. Rob break stats with a bird go wild. We from Queens, every pitch like trial. Convo loud, whole car on fire. Hot dog steam.